Imagine waking up tomorrow morning and realizing you secretly control $50 billion of the global stock market. You don't own a bank. You aren't a politician. Nobody knows your name. You are just one person sitting in a quiet room, playing God with Wall Street's money. You have rigged the game so perfectly that the most ruthless investment banks on earth are blindly handing you the keys to their vaults. You are completely invisible and absolutely untouchable. Until the phone rings. A voice on the other end tells you the market has turned, and if you don't wire them $20 billion by tomorrow morning, they will burn your entire life to the ground. What would you do? In March of 2021, this wasn't a hypothetical question. It was the exact terrifying reality for a man named Bill Hwang. He didn't just lose his fortune, his addiction to absolute control, and his refusal to walk away triggered the greatest, fastest destruction of personal wealth in human history. And it almost took the entire global financial system down with him. Bill Hwang wasn't your typical Wall Street playboy. He didn't buy mega yachts. He didn't flash his wealth on magazine covers. He was a quiet, deeply religious man who held prayer meetings in a modest Manhattan office. But behind the glowing screens of his trading desk, he was an absolute apex predator. Hwang ran a private family office called Archegos. Because it was entirely private wealth, the government didn't require him to report his trades to the public and to the SEC. He was completely invisible. But to the prime brokers at the massive banks, places like Goldman Sachs, Morgan Stanley, and Credit Suisse, he was a VIP, a whale, who generated hundreds of millions of dollars in fees. Hwang had found a loophole, a financial cloaking device known as a total return swap. He paid the banks to buy billions in stock for him, but the banks kept the shares in their own names. Hwang kept all the profit and zero visibility. Here is where human greed takes over. Because he was completely hidden, Hwang didn't just play the market. He rigged it against his own partners. Imagine walking into a high-stakes casino, putting $0 of your own money on the table, but the manager hands you $1 billion in chips just because of your reputation. Now imagine doing that at 5 different casinos on the exact same night, without any of them knowing about the others. That is exactly what Hwang did. He walked into 5 different major banks and made the exact same insanely leveraged bets. He built a $50 billion empire of media stocks completely out of thin air. He was borrowing money to make bets he couldn't afford. A towering monument to the illusion of control. But in finance, just like in life, when you build your empire on borrowed time, reality eventually issues a margin call. On March 22nd, his biggest holding, ViacomCBS, suddenly cracked. The stock plummeted. Hwang's invisible portfolio started hemorrhaging cash. The massive banks, finally looking at their ledgers, realized they had all funded the exact same ghost. Panic set in. They issued the ultimate demand. A margin call. Hwang couldn't pay. On Thursday night, the prime brokers held a desperate secret emergency meeting. They were staring down the barrel of a loaded gun. If they all rushed for the exit at once, they would trigger a global market crash. So, they looked each other in the eye and shook hands. A gentleman's agreement to unwind the massive positions slowly, to survive together. But when billions are on the line, loyalty is a myth. At the opening bell on Friday morning, Goldman Sachs smiled, walked away from the table, and immediately slit their partners' throats. They didn't just break the truce, they weaponized it. Knowing the other banks were trusting the handshake, Goldman quietly offloaded $10 billion of Archegos assets in a massive fire sale before the others even had their morning coffee. Morgan Stanley panicked and joined the bloodbath. Prices entered a death spiral. Credit Suisse, entirely blind to the betrayal, was left holding a massive burning bag. They lost $5.5 billion in a single weekend. An ancient Swiss banking institution, crippled by a man they didn't even understand. Bill Hwang lost $20 billion of his own fortune, the greatest, fastest destruction of personal wealth in modern human history. His empire wasn't destroyed by a bad company or a market recession. It was destroyed by the sheer gravity of his own ego. He over-leveraged his reality, believing his own myth until the very end. But the house always wins, and Wall Street showed him no mercy. This is Capital Chronicles.